Mr. Pavitt, I am told that you testified to the joint inquiry and also told privately to our staff that more money would not have prevented the 9/11 attacks. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
On another subject, perhaps starting with you, but asking each of you to comment on it, let's take the specific Midhar case. A lost, picked up, lost, had a visa to the United States, came back here early in 2001, knowledge that he was a matter of any interest, didn't get to the FBI until August, and then got there in a fairly routine, not emergency fashion. If an identical situation took place today, how would it be handled differently? How would it have been managed? What role would each of you have had in it? Would it have been done more efficiently? Might we well have picked him up before 9/11? And I think probably the greatest burden of that's on you, Mr. Pavitt, but I want everyone to comment on it.
Senator, I mean, your second question actually relates back to your first.
Okay.
I do not believe that additional resources, which I argued for vigorously to Congressman Romer and to Senator Kerry and a whole host of other people, I do not believe that at the end of the day that would have allowed me to have a different answer than one I gave you, which is no. However, additional resources, particularly people, I believe could have had a different impact on how the Hazmi and Mittar information was handled and dealt with. It was a mistake that certain things were not done. It was the intention not to make that mistake. It was the intention to do the right thing. It was the intention and the understanding of those who played, as I believe staff has stated to the Commission, that they thought they had done the right thing. But they can't, if you will, demonstrate that by producing a piece of paper. I used the concept of triage in describing some of the things we were doing. Back in August of 2001, in CTC alone, there were 19,000 CIA-generated messages, 19,000, and a handful, and I mean a handful of people dealing with them. Is that something we're proud of? Absolutely not. Is it something that contributed to the error? Yes, it did. It wasn't done the way we would do it today. We have put in safeguards. We have created training programs. We have indoctrinated. We are in lockstep with the FBI and others in the community on what we need to do when we have that kind of information. But at the time it initially surfaced, it was a blip on a very, very complex radar screen. Not an excuse again. We actually mounted very sophisticated operations, as you know, to figure out what this was. And then the next blip came up, and the focus wasn't as complete as it could have been.
Would the name have gotten to the FBI earlier under your present set of circumstances?
Oh, absolutely, sir. I believe, absolutely. Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Pistole.
Thank you, Commissioner Sender. The Midhar al-Hazmi case is a good representative of some of the challenges that the U.S. intelligence and law enforcement community dealt with prior to 9/11. In one essence, in the sense of the interdependence of the agencies upon one another. Obviously, we can't take action until we receive information. But it also demonstrates, for example, the inadequate tools that we were playing with at the time, that we dealt with at the time, that the Patriot Act and the FISA Court of Review decisions have eliminated. But, for example, one of the fundamental hallmarks of the American legal system is the doctrine of fairness. Obviously, defendants are entitled to a fair trial and to right to confront their accusers and things like that. We were not playing on a fair playing field at the time, and your staff has done an excellent job of detailing some of the challenges that the FBI New York dealt with the agency in trying to share information of an intelligence nature with criminal investigators who had perhaps the best information to provide, to shed light on it. It's almost analogous to the military. We would never send our men and women of the armed services into combat with antiquated weapons or communication systems, but yet that's exactly what we are doing to the men and women of the CIA and the FBI, trying to fight this battle with antiquated rules and techniques. So that's the major change since prior to 9/11. And then just the integration, as Mr. Pavitt mentioned, of personnel, which we had prior to 9/11, but the further integration at an operational and analytical level between the CIA and FBI.
General Hughes, Mr. Brennan, can you add anything to that?
Yes, and with regard to things getting better, the advent of the Transportation Security Administration and the restructuring of the Immigration and Naturalization Service into the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Bureau and the Customs and Border Protection Bureau, an outgrowth of the old Customs, U.S. Customs organization, and some features of immigration. Those three new entities, restructured or originated newly, would make everything different. Watch lists, screening of personnel, eyes on, the U.S. visit program, any number of activities would probably have caught this person coming into the United States with one proviso, and that is that the name of the person, generally speaking, would have to be entered in the databases and the knowledge bases that we depend upon. There is a chance that this person might have acted in a way that would cause their intercept to occur without that. So I don't want to give you 100% categorization that we have to have that intelligence in all cases. But generally speaking, the changes in the system that have been made since 9/11 would greatly ensure, I think, that this kind of entry by a person known to us, like that person generally was, would now be intercepted and vectored into screening and interrogation and incarceration, hopefully, if that's what they deserved.
I agree. There's just been so many changes. In addition to redundancy that's been built into CIA, making sure that they have the eyes on these pieces of traffic, the Homeland Security Presidential Directive 6 of last September that the President signed, which overhauled the entire watch listing and screening process, the establishment of the Terrorist Screening Center that is administered by the FBI, it is a much more efficient and effective system today than it was in September of 2001.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.